Hi, everyone. Welcome to Co-Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Boston, and this is our inaugural episode. I don't even know if you call it that, but it's our first episode of season 1. And I couldn't think of a better guest for our first episode. I'm so happy to welcome Dr. Ted Morris. Dr. Ted, as he goes by, is a veteran of the Canadian comedy scene and also a veterinarian. And when I first started doing stand-up comedy, pretty much everyone I met was very excited to tell me about Dr. Ted. And it was always a little awkward when I had to break it to them that, yes, I know him. I've known him since the year 2000 when he was a veterinary student and I was a surgery resident, and he was hilarious then. He was doing stand-up when he was in veterinary school. He's only gotten funnier, which I don't even know how that's possible. He has an album out called Dawn of the Ted. We're going to talk about it. He's been on the Halifax Comedy Festival, the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, JFL. He's all over the CBC. He's a very successful comedian. He even has been on America's Got Talent. That didn't go so well. We're going to get into it. And you know, when my mom listened to this episode, she said, he seems like a nice man. And she's right. He's a nice man. So please enjoy my talk with Dr. Ted Morris. Ever since I started doing comedy and people found out I was a veterinarian, they would say, do you know Ted Morris? And I would say, yes, I've known him for over 20 years. So when I decided to start a podcast, of course, my first guest has to be Dr. Ted Morris. So Ted, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. Very exciting.
It's very exciting. So I know a lot about you, but but we're going to pretend I don't. But actually, there's some things I don't know. So you started comedy during veterinary school. I actually didn't know that. I know you did it because the first time I saw you was when you were, I think, a third-year veterinary student. I still remember your jokes. It was so funny.
Oh, no, those are terrible jokes. Those are my first jokes.
They were still amazing, though.
True. I'm gifted.
You are gifted. I believe that. I believe that. And you inspire me. You had a joke about being at the mall in the food court.
Oh.
It's true, though. It was like a funny, because it's true. You're like, sevens have to date sevens.
Yeah, ugly people have to date ugly people.
Right. Because otherwise it kind of messes things up, right? Like if a 6 and a 9, then you have a spare 6, right? Then they'll never find anyone. So we have to stick.
Yeah, it was an ugly couple breaking up in the food court. And it was
That's what inspired you?
This is all you get. This is it. If you screw this up, you're alone forever. This is your person. This is your match.
Yeah, we have to work things out. We're both in long-term relationships. We know this.
We know this.
Stick with your person if you can. If you can't, it's okay.
Pick a good one.
That's a good tip for staying in a long relationship. So why did you start doing comedy in vet school? How did that happen for you? What kind of like sparked you starting to do stand-up?
I was never one of those people that like dreamed of being a stand-up when I was a little kid, but I loved performing when I was in grade school. Like anytime there was a class play, I'm like, let me have the biggest part. Like I loved doing all that stuff. And it also seemed very impractical. Like I had this sense from my parents, which whether it was real or not, is like, this is frivolous. Don't go down this road. You're smart. So do something smart people would do.
Right.
And then for high school, I moved to Africa. People were after me. I had to go hiding. But there was like no arts in my high school. So there was no chance of performing. And you really had to stream. It was the British system. So I did O levels and A levels. And you really had to stream for the A levels. So it's like you're doing science or you're doing like the arts. But by the arts, I mean, it was like history and geography.
Yeah, you're
like,
a politician.
So I kind of abandoned my performing love. I was also worried that it was too gay. And I'm like, I don't want anyone to pick up on what's going on with me. So that also drove me away. I was like, I would have loved to be a little theater gay. And I was too scared to even look at that road. So it wasn't until I got into vet school and we could, relax a little bit. Like, you didn't have to maintain a 90 average anymore. You just have to learn 70% of the stuff. And one of my classmates was doing improv just for relaxation. I'm like, that sounds great. I joined it for some improv and I got hooked on performing again. And then that led to me answering an ad in the Ontarian, the University of Guelph student paper, for someone looking to set up a sketch troupe.
Oh, wow.
And so I answered this ad. It was 3 of us. It was some like 18-year-old guy, some rando dude in his 30s who now runs the Guelph Comedy Festival thing, and me. And then one of the guys in my little group went and did stand-up. And it was the first time I'd ever seen live stand-up. And he was awful. but no one died. And I'm like, that looks like fun. I don't know what it was about watching it live. I'm like, that I want to try that. So like 3 months later, I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. And my whole thing was, I will try it 5 times. And if after 5 times I'm not funny, then I'm going to stop. Which seems like a ludicrously low number of times.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm going to be perfect after 5. That's a very perfectionist kind of mentality, I think.
Yeah. If I'm not good at this, I'm not going to do it.
And I remember I asked you this when I was trying to get into stand-up. I was like, oh, I'm going to ask Ted, what classes can you take? Do you do classes? But you, I mean, maybe because there wasn't any, or I don't know, but you didn't. You just did it and got good kind of as you did it. Or you were just good after 5 times. I don't know. Was that?
I was great after 5 times. No, the first time I wanted to die. The second time I also wanted to die. And then the third time I got laughs, and I got laughs every time. But the third time I got laughs where I wanted them to be. I'm like, okay, I think I could do this. But I snuck in. I was a hobbyist for years and years and years before I realized I could actually do it and get paid. I had no idea. It was just a fun thing I did on the side, and then it slowly took over my life.
Yeah. It was 3rd and 4th year vet school when I saw you, kind of knew that you were amazing at it. And that was probably after 5 times, I think. Yeah.
That was probably 6 or 7 at that point. So I was a polished professional.
Yeah. Ready for your Netflix special.
Ready.
Absolutely. So you just released an album. We're going to talk a bit more about that. It's called Dawn of the Ted. It is so funny. I wanted to ask you about this because it's kind of it's a little bit of insider comedy stuff, but there's sort of a joke about people who are like, I've got my hour, I'm going to do my album. And they've done it 5 times, or they've done it for a year. You waited like 20 years before you recorded an album. Is that right?
I'm very slow to do things and not particularly confident in my skills for some reason. Yeah, I mean, when I did the very first thing I did was my Comedy Now special, which most people would get when they were like 4 or 5 years in. And I was 10 years in when I recorded mine. So it went great. It was fantastic. I just kind of did the same thing with the album. I kept putting it off. And I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be good. And then I saw everyone and their uncle and their dog was making their album. I'm like, I need to jump in on this. And yeah, I also recorded it in a weird way. Like, people will often have a bunch of openers and turn it into a big show. And I didn't realize that's what was done. So I just did my own thing with just me. And it's just like an evening with Ted. And I think it worked out way better that way because everyone was there to see me, which was nice.
Yeah, I was there and it was so wonderful. And, you know, I listened to your album again to get ready for this podcast. I've been lucky enough to perform with you. I was at the album recording. I was laughing out loud in my car, like, even though they're jokes I know. And I wanted to ask you about that because a lot of comedy is kind of the surprise of the joke is what makes you laugh. Yeah. And some of your jokes, I know the joke and it still makes me laugh because of the way you perform it. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, there's the crafting of the joke and then there's the crafting of like, how are you performing this? That it still makes me laugh. I know exactly what you're going to say. And I'm literally laughing out loud. I don't know if you have any insight on that, but I'm fascinated by it.
Well, I'm kind of the same way. There are some comics who the first time I see them, I'm like, that was hilarious. I had a really good time. You're hilarious. And then the second time I see them, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you're doing everything exactly the same way. The beats are exactly the same. I mean, we all do that. Like, there's certain beats that we always hit on our jokes, but I really like being in the moment. And I really like the live experience. I like responding to the audience. Like, even when I'm doing TV tapings, I will throw in tags. I will react to things to the audience. And it's more fun for me. Like, I really love, my favorite comedians are ones who I've heard their jokes a million times and they still make me laugh.
Okay. All right. Something else that is in your bio. I don't know that much about it. And I just want you to talk about it as much as you're comfortable talking about America's Got Talent. Whenever you were able to talk about it, I know, like, I want to hear about that too, but like, you have to say you're not going to talk about it until a certain time.
NDAs are the yin yang from NBC. Yeah, they get real mad. They follow all your stuff.
To make sure you're not talking about it.
Yeah.
When I did hear about it, I was like, oh, it's going to be amazing because Simon Cowell is known to love animals. That's what I know about him. He pays for rescues. Like, he loves animals. He goes to little Yorkies that he travels with. So what happened, Ted?
It did not go amazing. It did not go amazing. The nice thing about comedy is that you can mine all your failures for laughs. So the whole time I'm like, this is going to make a great story once I've recovered from this. I would like to make it perfectly clear. they came after me. I did not apply to America's Got Talent. It has never been a dream of mine to be on America's Got Talent. I never really watched the show. I just saw clips online, like the inspirational, like this kid's playing, the piano with his face because he's got no hands. It's like, yay! And how inspirational. So that was my reference to America's Got Talent. One of my bits that I recorded at the Halifax Comedy Festival, they were using to promote the Halifax Comedy Festival on CBC. And for some reason it went viral. And America's Got Talent noticed. And two of them contacted me the same day. And they're like, hey, you got 2 million views. You want to be on America's Got Talent? So it was about a year process of them pitching me, getting back to me, being like, yeah, you made it through the next round. They really liked you. And so eventually I had my day. They flew me down. They picked me up at the airport. They put me up at a hotel. It was very nice and very civilized. And that was the end of the niceness.
Nice.
It was, well, I also didn't realize,
Oh, no.
I knew these shows were fake. I just didn't realize how fake they are. There's a fake backstage. So when they show people pacing around before their set, that is a fake stage. That has been recorded the day before. At least mine was recorded the day before. Because they're like, what's your pre-show routine? I'm like, I don't know. I watched the show and I enjoy the show. And they're like, yeah, but what do you do to get ready? I'm like, I just watched the show. It's like, but do you pace? I'm like, no, I just sit there and I watch the show. And they're like, well, would you pace for us? I'm like, okay, fine. Here's me pacing. So it was a day of doing interviews with people. I was matched up with some British pet psychic.
Of course you were.
An 80-year-old, very hard of hearing British pet psychic. And they kept pairing me up with her because I was very patient, I guess. And she was huge in England, but no one cared who she was in America. She did a reading on me. It was completely wrong. She's like, oh, your dog's doing this, your dog's doing that. And I'm like, my dog doesn't do any of those things, but I will pretend that they are. And then I went out and did my audition. I was already a little mad because one of the reasons I agreed to do it was I wanted to look at Heidi Klum in real life.
Oh.
I was like, I want to look at Heidi Klum. I want to look at her in person.
What's going on?
Yeah. And Scary Spice. I'm like, when am I ever going to be in the same room as Scary Spice? So let me do this. Neither one of them were judges on that season. I was very upset.
Who were the judges?
It was Simon, of course. Someone from Dancing with the Stars, who I didn't know. She might as well have been a piece of wood. Zero personality. Gabrielle Union, who was kind of my judge. My big connection to her is Bring It On, one of the classics of Western cinema, in the cheerleading oeuvre. She only lasted one season because she did not enjoy her time there, and I do not blame her for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Howie Mandel. But it was just it's a dumb little joke about me being annoyed by the names that clients are giving their pets, and it's just cute little cat puns. And the audience started to boo immediately. And I'm like, what? And I think it's either because it was a really long day. I was the second last person. It was almost midnight. And I think they had enough people to go through, so they didn't care. So they're like, okay, let's see what happens if we boo this guy. And I've never been booed before. Have you ever been booed?
Yeah, I think once the show was about booing you off.
It's weird.
It's a strange thing.
And once one person starts booing, booing is fun. Why not? Join in. So
not if you're the booee.
Yeah, it was weird, but just the look, and it's only a minute and a half. You've got nothing, and you have to stick to this is NBC okays every single word of that thing. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm on for the ride. And they're just like, boo. I'm like, this is so weird. And then I'm in my head and I'm like, am I one of those idiots that they put on the show because they think they're funny and they're not? Am I the clueless idiot? That seems like a long way for them to go to fly me down just to make fun of me. I had no idea what was going on. Simon gave me an X. It's very loud. When they hit that X, it's loud and jarring. He was like, I don't mean to be rude. And my only regret is I was biting my tongue. I really wanted to say, go with your strength, Simon. But at that point, I'm like, you know what? It hasn't been so bad that they're going to show me on TV. So I'm not going to give them anything. I'm not giving them any more footage so that they can potentially make fun of me. I'm not stupid. Simon was like, no, I don't mean to be rude, but that was torture. And I tried not to laugh. I'm like, okay, because I'm like, my job right now is just to stand here and be judged. It's the weirdest thing. So you're like, okay, I'll just stand here. The dance lady had basically nothing to say. Gabrielle Union was lovely. And then Howie Mandel was like, well, sometimes you have to pivot. You have to pivot with your jokes. If they're not connecting with the audience. I'm like, yeah, I know. but NBC okayed every single one of these words. I can't pivot. You know what's going on here, Howie, and I don't respect you as a comedian, so I don't care about your opinion of me. Like, none of the footage made it, which, yay. But the only thing I wish they'd caught was me walking off stage, just trying not to laugh and just rolling my eyes like, what did I just do? Because I was convinced, I was like, oh, you know what? I'll make it through the first round, and then I probably won't go any further, because I don't think this is my scene. It's very like middle America. I didn't have like a sad story or a weird story or like any sort of thing to like hang anything on for the narrative. So I'm like, this will be fun. It was just hilarious. So Simon Cowell, not a fan. Mutual, Simon, mutual.
Yeah. That's an amazing story though. You're right. Like when you do comedy, you're like, this is awful. I need to write this down, or I need to, because it is funny. It is hilarious. So.
Yeah. When I started doing road gigs, I would hear all these comics talking about their road gigs and their horrible road stories. I'm like, oh, I can't wait. That sounds like so much fun. And then you realize that when you're living the road story, oh no, that part's not fun. But the after part, when you're telling everyone how awful it is, that's the fun part. You just have to live through it first.
One thing you said I found really interesting is that in that moment where people are booing you, and like there are some people on those reality shows that you think, oh, they pick them because they're awful and we're all making fun of them. And that actually went through your head when you're because I mean, you'd been doing this for 20 years at the time. Like you have all these credits.
How deluded have I been this entire time?
I mean, that's imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But that's amazing to me that you at that point of your career would experience that. I mean, it just shows we all do, I guess. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I've had imposter syndrome my entire comedy career.
So it's never going to end.
It's never going to end. I'm sorry. It never stops.
Do you have imposter syndrome as a veterinarian?
No. That's different because it's measured and there's outcomes and you can tell if you're doing a good job because the animal is alive. There's very specific things that you can be like, yes, my scientific brain knows that I'm doing a good job with this. But with comedy, it's so subjective. So I wish I wasn't, but I'm still very much at that point where like you're only as good as your last show. And if you have a bad show, you're like, oh no, I gotta quit. I'm so bad at this. So then you're like, no, calm down. Talk yourself off the ledge. It's like, it's going to be fine.
That's amazing. Now I know the imposter syndrome is never going to end. Everyone else doing comedy out there.
Yeah. I think anyone who doesn't have imposter syndrome in comedy is probably not very funny.
Oh, and maybe a bit delusional, like you're saying.
Yeah. You have to have a lot of self-awareness to be a good comedian. Even if you're making it look like you're not self-aware, you have to have that. You have to have that like bird's eye view of yourself in order, I think, to be funny.
That's actually great advice. All right. I kind of know a lot of your comedy does talk about veterinary medicine. So I'm just curious, like, do you ever separate it? Are you just, because I know a lot of people call you Dr. Ted and you're the
Canada's funniest gay veterinarian.
Yes.
That's the joke they booed. They're like, I'm Canada's funniest gay veterinarian. As my mom introduces me to her friends, he's not a real man or a real doctor. Boo. And I'm like, what are you against? I think they told them to boo. It's certainly not boo worthy. If you don't think it's funny, I don't think it's worthy of a boo. But that was also off script because I did not. So I'm wondering if like, I threw in that line and then I did my rest of it.
Oh, because the cat naming, like that went kind of viral, at least in Canada, I remember.
Yeah, it went huge.
That's a very funny bit. And it's so non-offensive.
It's adorable. I mean, it was on, I've got my CBC jokes. Like I've cracked the CBC code. So, because I've done a lot of tapings for CBC and I'm like, CBC's going to love this. And they did. And the CBC audience loves it and can be easily offended. So I'm like, this is just a cute little cat puns.
Chairman Meow. That's one of yours, isn't it? Chairman Meow. I want to talk a little bit about language. And this is something that you talked about a bit on your album about the word gay.
Yes.
And how you can distinguish between me saying a person is gay or that lamp is gay or that's kind of gay and that it doesn't offend you because you have context. I'm kind of fascinated by that because you and I are both Gen X and the Gen Zs are kind of coming up, but there's a lot of words that we can't say anymore because they're going to offend people. And how do you feel about that? And then how do you feel about that in the context of being a comedian?
It takes a lot to offend me. And I'm definitely more worried about like actual homophobia than people not using the most appropriate words. And I get why people don't like referring to like my lamp as gay. Like your lamp's really gay. And I understand why that's offensive, but I also don't think there's any hatred behind it. I think there's just stupidity behind it. And you can't get offended by stupid people, or you will get offended every minute of every day that you leave your home. So that's kind of my attitude. I do love the Gen Zs. Well, you can't say that. I'm like, I can say it. I'm allowed to say it. I'm going to take this one. I'm saying it. I've got this other bit it's all about gay slurs. And it's quite fun. But when I first started doing it, I would solicit gay slurs from the audience, and I quickly learned that's not a good idea. Because then, and afterwards, they would come up to me and be like, "Hey, whatever," and I'm like, "No, that's not how this is." I was like, "Okay, mistake, rewrite. Let's not go to the audience for to find out what Sudbury's favorite gay slurs are, because they've got a lot of them." Yeah, I'm very comfortable in myself, so I don't really get bothered by anyone's dumb homophobic comments. I just resent it when I get it from Gen Z, especially when they're not queer, or they're like, well, I kissed a girl one time in high school, so I'm queer. I'm like, okay, but your queer experience is different than mine, and you don't get to tell me how to live my queer experience. And I came through the trenches. You try being gay in Africa. It's a good time.
Yeah. In was it the 90s when you were in high school?
It was 89 to 93. Yeah. If I realized that there was another annex to my closet that I hadn't discovered until I went to Africa. I was like, oh, look, there's way more space in here than I thought there was. I'm fine. I'll stay in here for a while. This is good. This is fine. It's like Narnia back here.
A safe place to hide. So, I mean, you kind of alluded to this with the CBC stuff. I know you do some corporate stuff. You work in the clubs as well in Yuck Yucks.
Yeah.
And then you do like comedy for veterinarians. And then the other clubs around Toronto and the Toronto area, you tour. How do you modify your language or your act, or do you? Like if you're talking to a veterinary audience versus you're at Yuck Yucks, versus CBC, like are you changing just the bits that you do or the sets you do, or are you actually changing your language?
There's definitely a bit of changing language. I didn't realize until like I was listening back to my album. I'm like, I've got a little potty mouth. Like there's so many explicit tracks, which I'm going to try and fix that for the next one. But for like the vet stuff, for the longest time, I did not think anyone would find vet jokes funny, like civilians. I'm like, these people aren't going to think this is funny. And then I would tell my friends like about my day, and they're like, you need to talk about this on stage. But my vet set has I figured out the vet jokes that civilians like, and then the ones that they don't. So I've got like a 45-minute set that's like just for vets, just for people in the industry. Like no one else is going to think this is funny. They might think it's horrifying, or they're just not going to get the references. So that's it's weird having this like set that I only do for very specific things. Clubs is much more like interactive. That's probably clubs, and then like touring small towns. That's when I change the most on the fly, because I have to try and figure out, I kind of go in with an idea of like, these are the jokes I'm going to do. And then I have little tester jokes that I'll do like at the beginning and be like, okay, I'll tell this joke. And if they don't laugh, I'm like, oh, you guys are dumb. Okay, so we're going to go this way for the rest of the set. Or, oh, okay, you guys are on the ball, so we're going to go this way. For the TV stuff, that's all like, has to be clean. It's not just the language, but also like the content as well. They're looking for like pretty cleanish stuff. Yeah, sometimes that's just an exercise in writing. Although I found I keep usually like you do your bits, you polish them, and then you're like, now I'm going to do them on this festival. But I seem to have like caught up to my bits. So a lot of times I'm writing stuff, doing it a few times, recording it on TV, and then spending the next year or two polishing those jokes after the fact. I'm like, this is the wrong way around. This is the wrong. Yeah. You're supposed to. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know what I'm doing. It seems to be working.
It seems like, whatever you're doing, it seems to be working. Okay, we're going to jump to a clip from your album.
Oh, no.
This is from Dawn of the Ted. And you told me I could pick one, which I wanted to pick one that was veterinary related. So I picked Boys Have Nipples Too. So let's jump to that.
Here's something I'm tired of doing. I'm tired of diagnosing nipples for you people. I'm sick of it. This happens on a regular basis. Someone brings in their dog and they're like, she got a nipple, she got like a tick. I'm like, no. Like, yeah, she's had it for 6 months. I'm like, no. We've been pulling it off. It's not coming. I'm like, that's not a tick. It's not a tick. It's a nipple. You've been giving your dog a purple nurple for 6 months. You've been bullying your dog. Leave it alone. And most people are embarrassed. They're like, what's this? I'm like, it's a nipple. They're like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. And then we just move on with our day. A lot of men get upset. They're like, but he's a boy. I'm like, you're a boy. Do you have to take off our shirts and show each other our nipples to prove a point? What is wrong with you? But every now and then someone will decide to fight with me. Like this guy last one that brought him in, he brings in this dog. She's like, oh, she's got a lump in her belly. I'm like, okay. And she doesn't like it when I touch it. I'm like, all right. And it's getting all red. I'm like, okay, show me the lump. That is a nipple. He's like, no, it's not a nipple. I'm like, no, it's like 100% a nipple. Why would I lie to you about that? Why? What possible reason could I have? I don't mean to brag. I'm kind of an expert on dog nipples. It's one of those things you pick up. They don't teach it, but you just pick it up along the way. He's like, no, it's not a nipple. I'm like, dude, it's a nipple. He's like, it's not. I'm like, I went online. I'm like, okay. You consulted Dr. Google. What does Dr. Google have to say? Oh, Google says it's cancer. I'm like, oh, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your dog is going to be fine. It's just a nipple. He's like, it's not a nipple. I'm like, dude, I can show you 9 more. I can't believe you only found 1 and gave up. I'm like, what's wrong with you? He's like, oh, well, if it's a nipple, why did she like it when I touch it? I don't know. Maybe her hands are cold. Maybe she's a lesbian. I don't know. Why don't we start by not touching your dog's nipples? It's red because you've chapped it. Leave it alone. It's a bad time of year. That'll be $100. You're welcome. Ugh.
Oh my God, so funny.
I'm
so
hilarious. Yeah, I think every vet in the world has had to diagnose nipples at some point. Unless, I guess, you're a large animal vet. Those nipples are a little more obvious. Teats,
Yeah.
I suppose.
The farming community, they know.
They know what the bits are. They know what things are called. They know what they're used for.
Yeah. So let's talk. I mean, that probably was you possibly ranting about that and someone saying you need to do that on stage. Where did you come up with that?
Most of my material is stuff that my partner has laughed at. Like, it's just like things I'm saying out loud, and then he laughs at them, and I'm like, okay, I should write that down. And other stuff is just like, I've got a thought, I go to an open mic, I see if that thought goes anywhere. But like how I write the joke out the first time tends to be how it happens. Like I don't do a lot of editing. Again, I'm a very gifted comedian.
I know.
Like it'll evolve. I'll add tags and stuff, but usually like the joke is kind of there, and then I'm just making sure that I'm making it as funny as possible. Because I watch some people at open mics and they're like, I don't know if this is funny. And you're like, no, it's not. Why did you think that was funny? How many jokes do you write? And how many of them do you keep? Like 1%? Weird. Everyone has their own process. I'm not judging, but I'm judging.
But totally judging.
Yeah.
So, but for you get an idea, you write a joke, it's kind of formed because you know it's funny.
It's very improv. Like it's just off the cuff. I'm not very good at being like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write 5 minutes of jokes about toast. It's a good exercise to do. And there used to be shows that would do that. It's like, this is the topic. Everyone has to write new material about this topic. And which are really fun shows. But most of my stuff is just improv. I'm stupid. I like to talk. I like to try and make people laugh around me. And then when they laugh really hard, I write it down.
So for your open mics, do you get up sometimes you don't know exactly where you're going?
Sometimes. I usually have like my little notebook with me. Otherwise, I will not remember because I'm an old man. And then I just kind of go up and I'm like, I think this is funny. Do you guys think this is funny? And they're like, no, we don't think this is funny. I'm like, okay, gone. What about this one? They're like, yeah, we think this is kind of funny. I'm like, great, fantastic.
And then do you record yourself and listen to it back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't remember most of what I say on stage. People be like, that thing that you said was really funny. I'm like, what thing? And they're like, that thing about... I'm like, I don't remember that. I don't know what's going on half the time. I'm just in my own world.
So you got to go back.
Yeah.
And say, that was funny. I want to give a quick thank you to our title exclusive sponsor, Hill's Pet Nutrition. Thank you so much. This podcast wouldn't be possible without them. And a very quick story. This company actually started in the late 1930s when a veterinarian named Dr. Mark Morris developed a new diet in his kitchen to help a man whose seeing eye dog was in renal failure or kidney failure. And Even from those humble beginnings, this company hasn't changed that much because Hill still believes in good quality ingredients. They believe in working with veterinarians and they believe in science. So thanks, Hills, and thanks, science. And I have so much gratitude for your help with this podcast. Okay, so you're a hugely successful stand-up comedian. You are also performing in drag. And I actually don't know much about Wilhelmina, your character. I hope that's how you say it.
Boxfärts, yeah. She's
Very
very
serious.
classy.
Very serious name. Can you just talk about this character and performing drag? I'm curious about it because it's one thing about you I don't know much about.
Oh, it's fun. I've always been curious about doing drag, but never, I'm like, I don't have the skills to do this myself. But one of my friends has been reviewing RuPaul's Drag Race online for years. Like, he had a goatee and he would his makeup, he would put makeup on, but it was terrible. And he still kept his goatee. And I was like, this is hilarious. And then he decided to start doing it really seriously. And he's like, well, if I'm judging these queens, I can't look worse than them. So
yeah,
he started working on his makeup. Her name is Wilma Fingerdew. Richard Ryder, also a stand-up comedian who I've been working with for 20 years. And he put one of our friends in drag. He wanted to practice putting a face on someone else. So he put a friend of ours in drag, and our friend looked terrible. He looked like a very, very ugly woman. And I'm like, that's not great. And then he's like, I'd like to put you in drag. I'm like, okay, I will donate my face to the cause and also be a very ugly woman. And then I was gorgeous. He did such a good job. I looked so pretty. I looked like Carla Collins. It was fantastic. Canada's sweetheart, Carla Collins. And then that just sort of snowballed. I was like, that was fun. I want to do it again. And I felt that my character come out like a lot of people kind of do. It happened when the wig went on and all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's this character here. And so we've been doing some online stuff, some years in review and reviewing Canada's Drag Race and a lot of the Drag Race franchises. But I just do it online. I do it from the neck up. Basically, okay. I don't really have any outfits. I do have a pair of shoes, but the very first time I put them on, I'm like, is this a joke? This is a joke. High heels? Are you kidding me? Who agreed to wear these? It's just the stupidest thing in the world. Yeah, anytime I do drag, I'm just like, ugh, women have it so hard. All this stuff is so dumb. So dumb. Ugh, makeup is gross. But it's really fun, and it's a different kind of muscle. I'm really excited to get a body and go outside with her. I want to take her on stage and do things not online and see what happens.
So she's kind of a pandemic baby.
She's a pandemic baby. It's her 3rd birthday today. Facebook reminded me.
Oh, happy birthday, Wilhelmina.
Happy birthday, Wilhelmina. She's the best. Yeah. So there's, I think it'll be fun because I will not be a lip syncer unless I'm lip syncing to Joan Rivers clips or something. I will not be a dancer. I will not be doing death drops. I will just be a shady, funny queen on stage.
Okay. It's a character then. It's not stand up. You're playing a character or embodying a character.
Yeah. Mostly it's been just improv. We're just talking off the top of our heads and nothing is planned. And we've just been friends for so long that the chemistry works really, really well. And Wilma is kind of the straight man, which is weird because Richard in real life is usually the dominant personality. But when we're in drag, I'm just this dumb, vacant idiot. She's a little stupid. She's a little mean. And it's charming. I've chosen to find it charming. So it's a fun dynamic and it's very different from any stuff that we've done before, as boys on stage, because we've done sketch together. We've done the whole thing. So this is kind of a fun new extension of stuff we've already been doing.
It's amazing. Okay, I'm going to pop back into veterinary medicine for a bit.
Okay.
We've both been veterinarians for a long time.
A long time.
And you have a joke about, I'm sorry if I butcher your joke, but just about how you have killed a lot of cats in your career. And if you kill any more cats, they're going to have to start calling you Curiosity.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but there is a dark side of that joke that I think veterinarians can appreciate and probably the public. I don't know how they take it differently than I take it, but I just wonder if you can speak to that a little bit about how comedy and veterinary medicine kind of intersect for you and that kind of darker side of our profession where we're euthanizing pets a lot and sometimes for good reasons. And sometimes maybe it just feels like an economic reason, but how do you square that up with your comedy, I guess is the question.
The darkness of the comedy, I think, helps to deal with the darkness of what we're doing. My favorite comment from a prof in university was, keep your sense of the ridiculousness, because that's going to take you a really long way in this profession. And I definitely kind of took that to heart. It's tough. Like, I got very burnt out, and I took a year off, like 10 years ago. I was like, I need to take a little sabbatical. I'm getting very burnt out by all of this. And then I tried to quit, like, to do stand up and acting and writing full time. And then some like virus was in the news and kind of ruined all of that. It was a fun 2 months of not being a vet. But I like dark comedy. I think dark comedy is really, really funny. And I think comedy is a great way of dealing with the darkness around us. I've had some people get very offended. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're allowed to be offended. But it's funny when they're waiting for the apology. They're like, aren't you going to apologize? I'm like, no, you're just telling me that you're offended. That's fine. That's like you're telling me that you like chocolate ice cream instead of vanilla. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Those are your preferences. I'm not, I do not care. I did have to figure out how dark is too dark for civilians. Because I think like nothing is too dark for most vets. that is what I have found. But I did have to figure out where that line was. I'm like, oh, no. You are not going to. Yeah, no, you're not going to find this funny at all. And every now and then I'm telling jokes about murdering cats, and like someone in the front row has just like lost her cat. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I did not. Yeah, I didn't know. Usually they laugh. Usually they're like, this is quite cathartic to laugh about this. But also, if your cat just died, why are you out at a comedy show the same day, same night? It's not my fault. I didn't kill your cat.
They're like, oh, this is a vet. It'll make me feel better.
He'll make it feel better. Like, I won't.
Sorry, I didn't do that for you.
I save my compassion for work.
Can you expand a little bit on what happened during the pandemic for you?
Well, I quit. I think it was like end of November 2019. I'd been at the same clinic, like great clinic, love working there, love the people there. And I'm like, I feel like now's the time. Like 2019, I was on America's Got Talent, and I did my like 5th recording at the Halifax Comedy Festival, and I did a really great gala at Just for Laughs with Trixie Mattel. I don't know, we're besties. It's so good. And so I'm like, I'm doing all this stuff. It seems kind of silly that I'm still have a day job. So let me try not having a day job. And then that led to me sitting around for several months when comedy disappeared during the pandemic. I did Zoom shows. They're stupid. Like, Zoom meetings are bad enough for people, but when you're doing a show, like a Zoom show, and no one has their camera on and nobody has their microphone on, you're like, I'm just yelling at my laptop right now, and I don't know how this is going. I can't tell. I survived okay, and then my clinic was like, hey, by the way, are you busy? And I'm like, I'm not busy. And they're like, would you mind picking up some shifts? So like June of 2020, I went back very part-time. And I'm still part-time. I just go in a couple of days a week and I hide in the basement and I do surgery, so I can talk to as few clients as possible. Because let's be honest, it's the clients that were driving me away. It's not the animals. It's nothing else. It's the clients. I threw clients under the bus when I was on Rick Mercer. I was like, I literally pointed at the audience. I was like, it's you. It's your fault. You're the reason I quit. Be nicer to your vets.
I was actually just going to ask you, what do you find the biggest challenge in veterinary medicine? But it sounds like that for you.
People, yeah.
The people. Yeah. I love the pandemic when we locked them out.
I wrote a joke about that years ago. It's like my perfect clinic would have no front door, like just a doggy door. You just shove them through with the credit card tucked in their collar, and then you take it from there. Yeah, it was quite relaxing not having to see people. It was nice. Yeah.
I also enjoyed it. I also enjoyed that time. I mean, it's silver lining, right? The pandemic, we call it the pandemic silver lining. Okay, I'm popping back into comedy. You kind of alluded to kind of gross road shows or tough road shows. And I wanted to address something that I may just be me, but I've noticed a fair amount of toxic masculinity in comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Is it just me? I don't know. How do you deal with that? I'm actually asking for everybody, but also a bit for me because it's something I struggle with. And you're a man who's gay. So
okay.
you have the advantage of not being a woman, but you don't have that kind of masculine bro vibe.
I don't have a bro vibe.
You're a yuck comic. You go on the road, you do these things. So how do you deal with that?
I managed to avoid a lot of it because I find the worst of it is in the open mic scene. Because you've got all these new comics who have no idea what's funny and they think that being sexist or racist is like edgy and interesting. I'm like, it can be. Like, you can make a very funny racist joke, but you really have to be like a very good comedian to do that. So, and a lot of them just think that being edgy and gross is enough. And they're like, oh, I'm getting a reaction. It's like, the reaction you're looking for is laughter. That's the reaction. Like, if you're just getting groans and oohs, like, that's an issue. So I managed to avoid a great deal of that early on. But when I started to encounter it, I was just like, no. I just was like, you do your own stupid thing. My favorite thing is when I'll be doing a show and someone will be on stage doing some homophobic jokes because people love homophobia. And then I will go on before them. They won't pay attention to the show, to what I'm doing, to the audience loving my gay self. And then they'll go on and try and do their typical homophobic jokes. And the audience is just not on board. They're like, no, we were reminded that we actually like a gay. So we're not going to laugh at any of this stuff. Plus, I had a car. If you have a car in Canadian show business, in stand-up especially, you don't have to be in the car with toxic masculinity. I just wouldn't. I'd be like, oh, can I get a ride to this gig? I'm like, no, you can't. Not you. There's a very few people I won't perform on stage with because what they're doing has nothing to do with me. But I do have a list of people I will not be in a car for hours driving to a gig because I'm like, no, it's too much. I'm going to push you out of the car at some point. So I deal with it by being funnier than them and not letting them in my car. That's okay. That's how I deal with it. But honestly, it does get a lot better as you get to do better gigs. Like once you kind of get out of those open mic shows, you really get to, hopefully most of the jerks will sort of fall away, but not all of them. Not all of them.
Not the ones on your list.
Yeah, not the ones on my list.
You kind of answered this question. I mean, you're still doing veterinary medicine, but I always like to ask people like, okay, I mean, you're hugely successful. I think the pandemic kind of...
Well, Canadian successful.
Okay, we'll talk about that too. I'll put a pin in that.
Yeah, I've started referring to me as Canada's best kept secret. I'm like, oh, you mean I don't do social media? Yeah. I've neglected a large chunk of very important stuff in my career, which I'm now going to be fixing.
Okay. Yeah, no, I know that they say that's quite important, but TikTok funny, stand up on the stage funny can be the same or not.
Yeah, I do love watching TikTokers get booked at big festivals and just dying. They just die. They just die. I mean, it's not their forte. Like when you're doing TikTok or YouTube, like you've got control of everything. You've got control of the edit. You know exactly what you want to do. And a live audience is very different. And they don't have the skill set to deal with a live audience. But they've got the followers, so they get booked. It doesn't matter if they lay a steaming turd on the stage every single time. It's fun though, because usually a lot of them are very arrogant, and then all the stand-ups are like, who are you? And they're like, I'm very famous. And like, you can't do what we do. And you're in my house right now, TikTok.
All right, you're throwing it down. So
yeah, take it.
Like you're Canadian famous, whatever you want to call it. You're very successful. And so it sounds like you were going to not practice as a veterinarian anymore, or at least take a significant break.
Yeah, that was the plan.
Now you're out there again. You're very successful. Pandemic's, it's over. There's no more COVID. It's done. We cured it.
Yeah, it's fine. It went away. Just disappeared one day.
Are you going to leave veterinary medicine? Are you trying to make that decision? Are you happy with your like part-time, stay in the basement, do surgery? Where are you at with your kind of deciding about comedy and veterinary medicine?
It's been good. I've been very grateful to have that kind of back up. Although if I'd known how much money I could make off of my album, then I probably wouldn't have gone back. Because my album came out like at the end of 2019. So I got my first like payments for it in 2020. And I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you, satellite radio play. That really does put a nice little chunk of change in your pocket. So that is still my plan, but I'm getting my ducks in a row a bit better, because in Canada, at least, like relying just on stand-up is almost impossible unless you're like a really great like corporate comedian, which I am, but like just for vets. Like I don't really have a corporate set that I can do for like CIBC or something like that. There's too much animal stuff, and then the rest of the stuff is too gay for most corporates. So I'm looking more at like getting into writing gigs, and also looking at like maybe I go to the UK. Do I get some like American work papers so I can go tour down in the States? Like just trying to get everything. Before, when I quit, it was like, okay, I quit, and then it was like, oh, what do I do now? And so now I'm like getting all that stuff in line so that when I'm ready to quit again, I can just sort of like hit the ground running. I might become a cruise ship comic. I don't know. Someone contacted me from a cruise ship and they're like, hey, we'd love to have you audition for us. And so you can go on European cruises and entertain people. And in my 20s, I'm like, cruise ship comic. Like, that was a joke. But now I'm like, oh, no, that sounds really nice. That sounds like a nice way to go. That would be lovely.
Vacay.
Yeah.
Have a little vacay time.
A couple of my friends are cruise ship comedians. They're loving being on vacation all the time.
They seem happy. Actually, I've seen people who are doing that. I'm like, I did the same thing because when I went to Humber, they talked about being a cruise ship. I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, like, ugh, losers.
You never know.
You never know.
And do you think you would live in the States or ever? Because a lot of Canadian comedians go down there.
Yeah, Americans. So, I mean, my partner is American, so, but he doesn't want to go back. It took 2 years to deprogram him after he came up, and now he doesn't want to go back. And he did. So I'm like, okay, I would like part-time would be nice. Like, spending a couple months in LA every year would be nice. I don't know if I want to make like the full move. I really love being in Canada. Canada's just lovely.
Me too.
It's just nice.
Me too.
It's just nice. It's just our entertainment industry is too small. But once you get in there, you're okay.
All right. I have another question. You kind of answered it too, but you've done Winnipeg, Halifax, Just for Laughs. You've been on CBC Debaters. You've been on Rick Mercer's show. Is there anything else in Canada, at least, or in the world that you think, oh, that's something like that's a goal for me. That's something I really want to be on or something I really want to do?
I really want to do the Edinburgh Fringe, and I was on track to do it in 2020. I met this really great agent at Just for Laughs, and she got to see me crush my gala, and she was very helpful, very generous. She's like, yeah, I don't understand why you're not. Like, why aren't you going to Edinburgh? And also, where's your agent? Why isn't your agent here? Like, that's a story for another time. The comedy agents, yeah, God bless them. So that was kind of my 2020 plan, and that got derailed. But I still want to do it, and I'm trying to do it like not at the base level. I know it's going to be my first time there, but I think I'm good enough that I can kind of get some interest, get some action. I know there's a million shows, but I don't want to be one of those people doing a show for like 10 people in like some basement somewhere. I want to try and get a good venue. So, of course, me being me, it's now 2023. The Edinburgh Fringe is starting, and I am still not there. So that's a goal for next year.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. But now that you say that, I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see you there. So
it's rough getting eyes on your show, but if you do, it's pretty sweet. And every time I performed in the UK, they're all shocked. That they're like, how come you're not going to Edinburgh? I'm like, no. And it's like, we're like, okay. I will fix that. Thank you very much. There's my imposter syndrome cropping up again.
Would you do a one-person show, or would that be a stand-up show? Or would that be like a 1 hour special?
It would be a mix of my stand-up and my storytelling, because I don't think you can. Okay. I mean, you can just do like straight up stand-up at the Fringe, but I always think it's better to kind of turn it into like a Fringe show. So you gotta have a nice thread. You gotta have a little story. You gotta have a little pathos in there. So I think I can make it really funny, but also make it a Fringe show and get people excited to be there. There's a vet school right there. Should be able to fill the seats on at least for the first week. Get some interest.
We'll tell those vet students.
We'll tell those vet students.
I know faculty there.
Perfect.
Ted. I will help you.
Perfect.
All right. It's been so wonderful having you here for the inaugural comedy scene, Co-Medicine. I still haven't decided how to say it.
I didn't know how to pronounce it. I was like, Co-Medicine? This is very Italian.
That's a good one. I'm just leaving it that way because Tig Notaro had her special Live or Live, and no one knew how to say it either. When she first broke out. So so I'm just like, but Co-Medicine, I think, is how I'm going to say it. Is there any? You've got your album out there, Dawn of the Ted. Yeah. Highly recommend people listen to that. It's laugh out loud funny, even if you know the jokes.
Look at the album art; it's covered in deceased animals, but no one ever notices.
Absolutely wonderful. And anything else that you want to promote?
My Halifax Comedy Festival will be airing at some point on CBC. If you want to see more of me, just go on CBC Gem, and I'm all over it. Like that's okay. Where all my stuff is. It's
kind of a darling of CBC.
Well, once you get in. Like Halifax really liked me. I did the Winnipeg Festival twice over the pandemic. So many of my friends are like, I'm not performing anywhere. I was like, oh, I did 3 TV tapings during the pandemic somehow. It was good. Having open heart surgery during the pandemic was great because all of a sudden I had a bunch of new material. So I got to do that for Rick Mercer. They're like, do you have 7 new minutes? I'm like, funny thing. Yeah, actually I do. I have some jokes about my my dicky heart. Yes.
Forgot to ask you about that. Okay. Next time I'm going to ask you about that.
All right.
This is my last question. This is a new podcast and I'm very excited about it. Trying to bridge stand-up comedy and medicine. And I really would like to get Ken Jeong to come on my podcast. Dr. Ken Jeong, but as a comedian, he's known as Ken Jeong. If you could speak directly to Ken Jeong, you're just talking to Ken now. How would you get him to come on Co-Medicine?
Ken, I don't think you're that busy these days. I haven't seen you on anything in a while. Is this the wrong tactic? Ken, I know you're lonely. Come on. You want to talk to people. You want to talk to your peers. I mean, we're not your peers. We're better than your peers because we're veterinarians. You come on and if you want to have a little cry about how things are going. No, I love Ken Jeong. How would I invite him? Would he want to come on? Sure he would.
I think of course he
would.
Tell
us all your secrets.
All right. I think that's going to do it. I mean, I think I'm just going to send him the clip of that.
I'll be shocked if that doesn't work.
Probably by my 4th episode, Ken will be here.
Could you stop harassing me? Okay, fine. I'll do it. I wasn't busy.
Okay. Thank you so much for being my inaugural guest.
Thank you for having me.
Comedy Scene, Comedicina, Co-Medicine, however you want to say it. Everyone, this is Dr. Ted Morris. Please check him out on his many, many, many tapings and his album, Dawn of the Ted. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up this episode of Co-Medicine. I've been Dr. Sarah Boston. Thank you so much for listening. I just want to give a big shout out to our exclusive title sponsor, Hill's Pet Nutrition, for helping to make this podcast possible and for supporting veterinarians and initiatives like this. Really, literally couldn't do it without you. I want to thank musical genius and stand-up comedian Mark Edwards for making music that somehow makes me laugh. I don't know how he does it. Please check out his info in his show notes. He is a stand-up comedian and actor. He's absolutely hilarious. And big thank you to my producer, Heather McPherson from Twisted Spur Media, who just seems to make everything work and everything sound great. And I also couldn't do this podcast without her. Thank you for listening. I hope you're having as much fun as I am. That might actually be hard because I am obsessed with this podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please let us know, let your friends know, give us likes and nice comments, do all the things, help support this new podcast. If you didn't enjoy this podcast, I don't know what you're still doing here. You know what? If you didn't enjoy it, you can just do nothing. Nothing would be good. We will see you next episode. Thank you.